Brother Ian.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon to you. So today we have a heavy session.
Yeah.
I'm happy that you're here.
Mm-hmm.
You had a very intense procedure. You had surgery on your heart.
Yeah.
And we had spoken before you went in, there was a possibility that you were not going to come back to this side, to come out alive.
Yeah.
And while this is fresh, and I know it's intense on you, so we'll go as gentle and as deep as you'd like, just to talk about this piece of facing death consciously, facing the possibility of annihilation consciously.
Yeah.
I talk about this when this very heavy gift is given to us. I call it as living life with death as your advisor.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked about this, I've written about this. It's something that very few of us do. And it's something that I've seen when death comes on knocking people's doors, where the possibility of dying comes. People sometimes have a come to Jesus moment and very quickly go back, if they come out of the illness or the procedure of life, go right back to the old ways of being, which weren't honest to the soul's mission. So can you just tell us what happened between us as you went into it?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been an intense week. I mean, it happened last week, right? Exactly a week from today. And I was on a waiting list. You know, I knew I needed this procedure, and towards the end of last week, my cardiologist called and said, "Yeah, we got a spot, we got an opening. Let's do this." And as I was thinking back about this week, which was so intense and so many things happened that I don't have a clear recollection. So last night, I really took the time to feel and think back to what had happened. But what I could recognize was 4 moments that were significant in this process. And it was the day before I was hospitalized. I would enter the hospital. The morning I enter the hospital, the night before the procedure, and everything that happened after that. And in 3 of these instances, you were a great part of it because we talked. We really talked, and we really went in. What I really needed and what I really appreciated in those moments and was so helpful was that the space you created, as we talked about, these 4 phases, which I'll go in one by one, but without sugarcoating them. There was no, oh, come on, you'll feel better, it's good for you. None of that. It was just about recognizing, acknowledging what was there in that specific moment, because each one of these 4 moments had a different energy, had a different significance and intentionality to it. And it was so important that I was able, thanks to you too, to really see them for what they were, what was going on, what was the experience in that moment, what was the purpose, what was the intentionality, what was the opportunity, and really the opportunity in those moments. So I don't know, I can start with the first one, but I'm really going to need you to help me with this, because in these talks we had, I have certain recollections, but most of it is just gone because I was so involved in what was going on that I don't have a clear mental recollection because there was so much going on an emotional level. So the day before the hospitalization, it was obviously, I'd just gotten the news that I was, the following day going in. And obviously there was that, first off, something that was is significant to me is the fact that the probability based on statistics that I would not come out of the OR were very small. But I just intensely felt that the possibility was much bigger. And we'll talk about why, but basically, I was asking myself, was I over dramatizing something? Or was my soul?
Oh, it was a 50-50 piece. So for me, as someone who loves you so dearly, I really felt in a moment when you said that to me, and you were sort of nonchalant about it, but also you're such an honest and present person. I also knew you knew the gravity of a situation. And it really was a 50-50 thing because you've done so much work. And I know how tired you are from having done all this work all these decades. A part of you was really ready to go. So it wasn't, not only was it not over dramatization, there really was this hanging in the balance of a part of you is done, and not done in a negative way. You've done a tremendous amount of work. And by investigating it, you took the invitation to come back. And it's interesting when we were talking about it initially, and you said the same thing, and I knew very much in my bones that not only wasn't any kind of drama, it really was your soul was like, do I stay or do I go? And then the personality and the soul had to sit down and have a powwow of what are the benefits. And I remember the first thing that came out of your mouth is, you were staying for your loved ones, which fair enough, and that's a beautiful thing, and we can get into that. But your courage, which you never lack in, to face this is incredible. So hats off to you just for that. So go ahead. So then go from there.
Yeah, that's the possibility, an opportunity to finally rest. And, get out of this shit show, basically. So at the same time, I really wanted to take the time to look back. Did I have regrets about how I had lived my life? Were there things that I did not do that I wanted to? And what was so relieving was feeling that peace of saying, no, I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I would not, live the next hours differently. Incredible. And that was such a relief for me because I'd never, it's been some years since I really went there and asked myself, there's this possibility. Am I okay with it? I mean, during the dark night of the soul, which we talked about in our first episode, obviously the thought came. But yeah, it was so relieving and so pacifying to feel that, no, I'm doing exactly what I love. There was sadness for leaving my loved ones behind and that possibility. There was the longing to finally rest. And just holding in that moment the ambivalence, being so tired, having had enough, the pain of incarnation, really feeling it, not denying it, not sugarcoating it. And at the same time, the guilt, because, I wanted to bail out or at least say, okay, call it a day. And what I would miss, what I wouldn't. So it was a very, to me, honest analysis of, how did this go? How was this half century for me? And overall, an element of peace because, it had gone the way I felt it was right for me. And
I really,
keep
for
going.
me with
That's
people, well, if honestly, I can say, if one doesn't have these thoughts of how painful it is here, even when things can be great, or if one doesn't have thoughts of wanting to leave here, whether it's suicidal ideations or just I'm tired, one's not paying attention.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make us bad or weak. It is painful with all the wonderful here, right? It's the wonderful, terrible realm. It's a wonderful realm. It's also really a terrible realm on so many levels. So again, really so courageous of you to face that so honestly. And so much of this new age poo-poo stuff is like, oh, light, love, it's great. It's like 50-50.
Yeah.
You're not paying attention. So again, so courageous. Again, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So
No.
So it's on.
I was done with that first part.
So we talked about that, and you really showed up for that, and you really wonderfully teased out the part of your fatigue, which is every human fatigue, the part of pain, and the part where you've answered out of love. Out of love, I also maybe want to be here.
Yeah.
So then go to the next phase.
Yeah. And the next phase was the following morning, the day of the admission to the hospital. And, when going to bed the previous evening, I knew I wanted to, at a certain point, go into meditation and connect with whatever was willing to show up. And I woke up spontaneously around, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 in the morning, and I just went, on my meditation cushion, and I just went into meditation. And it was fairly brief before I felt this state of, and I've been thinking about it. I've been going back, and it's hard for me to describe it or even to feel into it. But I would say the closest thing that I can relate and, associate with it is like the Hara dimension, a dimension of pure intentionality. It was not an emotional space. It was not a mental space. It was just a space of intentionality. And as I was staying there, which felt where I needed to be, I could hear what was the voice there. And it was like, it felt like my voice, but a voice that, came from a space of pure intentionality. It was not emotional. It was not loving or anything. It was just matter-of-factly, and said, this is not the time. Something in the whereabouts of this is not the time, and we still want to experience more of this realm. And it really felt like a conversation between my human mind and some kind of higher mind. Maybe the higher self, I don't know, but it was very clear that both were present in that moment. It was not like I had transcended my human mind. And it really was interesting how it felt like one of those moments where life choices are made, where, where things happen, where important life choices are made. And the funny thing, well, funny in a way, because that voice said, yeah, we're going to keep going some more, but without a chunk of the grief and existential terror. And I was like, you can do that? Now, at 50, you do that? You dipshit.
Motherfuckers.
But yeah, and it was that sense of trust. That's such a deep sense of trust in that presence, in that part. And obviously of relief, because I could definitely do without some of the grief and existential terror that I've been living with for half a century. But at the same time, there was this consolidation of surrender. And really, from that moment, this huge element of surrender.
So if I can just stop you just for a quick minute, the space you're speaking of is what some people call higher self or soul. That's that communication. From my experience of holding space for you, that space only came because you've done the work. It wasn't like the soul is saying like, okay, we've messed with you for 50 years and now we're going to remove this. It really is because whatever that lesson and those lessons were for you to not even learn, but to wrestle with, to develop these muscles of a soft heart and a soft mind, that was done. So it wasn't just like, okay, we mess with you for the first half, and now for whatever time you have left, we'll make it easy. This is the part of why we do the work, to soften it. And it's not punishment, and it's not, karmic badness in the past life. Although that stuff can be real, but really for you, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Can you just talk for a minute about from the terror of dying and then being really bummed out that you got to come back? Can you just address that for a second?
Yeah, that's part 4 of the whole thing.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Because that's something that no one speaks about, and something I've seen over and over as a clinician. So go to part 3. So where do we go from that?
So part 3 is, the day of the admission, and in the evening, the day before the procedure, we talked on the phone. I was, just walking the corridors of of the hospital, and I have some recollection, but obviously I'd like you to bring, your memory of that moment. But what I could feel was I could say I was holding myself in the diversity of the spaces I was in, because I was in the fear, obviously, of the procedure. I was in the grief and sadness for my loved ones. And I was in the peace for feeling that sense of being carried. And literally doing the dead man's float. Which to me is such a beautiful expression. I found it this morning because I wanted to know what's the corresponding expression in English, which is the same thing as in Italian, which is fare il morto, which doing the dead man. And I think it's so beautiful as far as the image is concerned, and so pertinent to what we're talking about. And really being in the moment of facing everything that was coming up, the anxiety, the trust, and the self-soothing, the tears of sadness, but the love at the same time. And I think that element of self-soothing, of holding space for myself, is so, I'm so glad I got there eventually, because it was such a peaceful place with everything coming up. I could really experience how I can be at peace with fear, with anxiety, with grief, with sadness, with everything going on, and still be in that, still hold that, still lovingly embrace that as just the human condition, and being human. And still feeling that I am carried, I am floating on this river. And most of the work is not done by me. Most of the way is not walked or swam by me.
You show up. Your work is to show up. Our work is to show up.
Right.
Our work is to show up.
Yeah.
Which is not as easy as it sounds, because we do everything not to show up because it's so intense and so painful and seemingly isolated and seemingly alone, even when we're held.
Yeah.
You've done so much work on yourself, which is how you've been able to show up like that. It's so interesting in cultures like, let's say, the old Tibetans. Their whole life would be a preparation for this moment. They would practice death and dying. They would practice being in a bardo state. There would be visualizations around it. One of the deep shames of our culture is we're in such denial of death. And because of it, we're not prepared not only for this moment, but we also can't live fully. Again, the thing that I started saying, to live life with death as our advisor, is not some morbid thing. It's to actually, first and foremost, be prepared for these moments, because we know when they come. We do not know when they come, but also to live life more fully. Right? So in this culture, when somebody dies, we put them in a suit or a dress and then put makeup on them.
Right.
The level of denial here.
Yeah.
Our food supply, you don't see animals that are killed, or even vegetables when they're cut. We're never in touch anymore. And that's just a real shame, because we all suffer for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
go to the next level.
Yeah. So I remember going in, and when I was brought out, I remember I was slowly coming back to, and I clearly remember the phrase, "Not this fucking place again."
Amazing. Amazing.
And just breaking down in tears.
Was that in Italian? Did the phrase come to you in Italian or in English?
I think it was in English.
It was.
Because
amazing.
I can't think of an expression in Italian which conveys it as good.
That's amazing.
Not this fucking
beautiful.
place again, you know?
Yeah.
And that, you know, the emotion of saying no, well, okay. The joy of being alive and seeing my loved ones and knowing I would see my loved ones. And at the same time, the disappointment
Yes.
was so profound. The disappointment was so profound. The opportunity lost, you know, shit. I had a chance to get the fuck out of here, and here I am. And I mean, the following hours are kind of blurry because I think I numb myself out a little bit. But at the same time, I can remember there was anger and a certain amount of resentment for the messages that would come in. You know, my friends and loved ones writing messages, and I could feel
Pulling.
Yeah, I was angry. I was resentful. You know, I didn't have my heart open to them. And in a space of, I'm so glad I'm still here with you. There was resistance, obviously. There was a lot of resistance. And it took several days to realign with the true soul's intention. I mean, I wasn't that angry, but I was, you know, I alternated disappointment, resentment, and just numbing myself out.
Your clarity is astounding, brother. Your clarity is astounding that you really have paid attention to all these different phases, which is my experience of being around it for a long time, is how it works. It's just that for most people, it's unconscious.
And I remember we talked about this when I came back home a few days later, and and I was trying to sugarcoat it. You know, it's like, yeah, but after all, it's a good thing. And you were like, no, no, talk to me.
How we are. Yeah, let's go to really what's going on here.
Right,
It's amazing.
Yeah,
You know, it's so it was very heavy, right? So when we spoke and you were like, oh, it's just a person, and we both were talking and we both were like, no, this is really 50-50. You really might not come back, not just because it's an intense procedure, but really was you're at this place. And I really felt it, and I believe it to this moment. You could have really gone and it wouldn't be any serious karmic debt, but, you know, something would have pulled you back. You know, I want to also talk just from this side of people who are sitting with someone who's going through something like that or dealing with an illness, a loved one, which I adore you. It's very hard to hold space for someone unless you've actually had some insight into your own process. So I remember when we talked, and I realized one of the ways I can help maybe move some of the burden so you can be able to a little bit relaxed. I said, hey, just give me the addresses, emails of your loved ones. Yeah. Some that I don't know, and I will handle it. So if you don't come back, I will have the conversations and give them some solace of like, hey, homeboy knew what's going on. He did his work. So that was one way that people can actually offer with someone who's going through an intense thing.
Yeah.
And the other part was to really hold my absolute love for you like my heart really broke. Like, I've been around death and dying for a long time. I have a muscle that I've developed, but with someone that I love so much, I really was like, this place is going to suck without you. Just as a global thing of how much light you bring here. And also my own life. I just fucking adore you, man. And I was like, Jesus. And then the other side was like, I got to hold that for myself, not lay it on you. And my work as someone who's my brother, I have to really keep my shit out of the room, process it internally, and just hold space for you. And that doesn't mean denial.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean denying our pain of our loved ones, but also being respectful enough. It's amazing in medicine, in the US, half of this ridiculous medical budget, trillions of dollars, half of it is spent in the last 10 days of someone's life, called heroic medicine, because exactly people cannot hold that. So they torture someone for 10 days, where they're going to die anyway, violating the body in all kinds of ways, because of exactly what we're talking about. Because the Ian hasn't done his work, so he's afraid of dying, which just makes it more miserable and more unconscious way of living. And the partner, the friend, the brother hasn't done his work, and they really fight the inevitable and make it way more painful. So this is something that's actually going on, right? Half the budget the last 10 days.
Yeah.
So what we're sharing with people here too is pay attention to this piece. You can really have the sorrow. Like my heart broke. I cried and I was like, God, I'm going to really miss this man. And also, we joked, yeah, you're going to turn some fucking lights on and fuck with me for a couple of days and it'll be funny if you don't come back. And you said, I'll communicate with you. But also that you can hold both those things and really just trust that the only thing that's real here is love, and the only bond that we take with us is love. And man, no one's loved more deeply than you. I'll give you that. Right? And also for you to be like, hey, I'm going to put this down for a second. I'm going to put down a responsibility of my parents and my partner and this kid that I love and these friends that I adore. Just for a second, I'm going to make some room for myself. And I thought that was very, very powerful.
Yeah. And it was so touching to feel your love and your willingness to accompany me there, even though it was painful for you as well. It was so, I feel so grateful and so blessed to have that, to have had that in such a precious moment. And
well, it's your karma, brother. I've been a doorman of death since I was 16 years old. To be able to do it with someone, and I honestly have to say, never have I been with someone so conscious who went through. And it was a revolving door. You came back out. Great for me, great for you. Not so great for you. Sometimes great for you, definitely great for me. But you could have really exited on the other side and not come back. So that's also not a coincidence that I was in your life at this point. Besides all the personal love between us, this is also doing the work for you that you've done, The reason I really wanted to share this, well, it's fresh, and I know it can be, I'm not putting words in your mouth, be painful. This is not about a morbid issue. This is about facing this so we can really live life more fully and engaged. And the sugar coating thing is a defense mechanism if we can actually feel a part of us that doesn't want to be here.
yeah.
I tell my patients all the time, like, you can have the most, I love the divine. Half the time unconsciously, we got two middle fingers up towards the skies, being like, fuck you for all the pain down here. Yeah. Fuck you for all the betrayals. Yeah. I didn't come here for this. Yeah, well, the ego never wants to have that experience, but to face it like you did, that is the thing that actually then makes you be here and be engaged more. And you don't have to go through a hard procedure to experience this. All our destructive behaviors are ways that we commit suicide slowly because it's so painful to be here. All the ways we numb, starting with shallow breathing at a young age. We just don't even take life force in because it's so painful to be here. Yeah. Poor eating habits, drinking, drugging, sex, numbing, phones. We don't want to be here. So when you answer it correctly by slowly dropping the numbing, then you'll have the clarity of someone like you going through this. And again, it's not some Hollywood movie. You're going to have the moments where like, I don't want to go. And then it's like, oh, fuck, I really want to go. Then it's like, oh, I got to do this work. Then it's like, fuck, I don't want to come back. But to see you even in a softer space in a matter of a couple of weeks is mind-blowing, because you're still one of the softest men that I know. So there's also something really beautiful that got even more ironed out and softened because you answered this in such a conscious way. And again, beautiful, just beautiful to observe. Beautiful to observe. So how do you feel on this side of it? The guy before and the guy now in this moment?
I think I'm still adjusting. There's so much still going on, still moving. I still don't know, how much of that chunk has actually been removed or is just in my head. But I mean, I was thinking this morning in the shower, now I understand why I chose Italy. Because I've been eating all the gelato and pizza and bread and stuff. I've been killing myself with carbs and sugars. But, now I know why I chose Italy, because at least that, please at least give me good food, because I'm not going to fucking stand this. So
that's amazing.
I've really been enjoying what this place has to offer. So I think it's really, I don't think there's that, thing that happens and changes you where you don't have to do anything. You still have to find give yourself the stuff that makes you feel good and whatnot, and acknowledge the stuff that makes you feel like shit. But at the same time, it's just, I think there's been a deeper step into surrender and trust.
Yeah. It's about being human. These experiences make us more human, and we have such a painful human experience that we want to go into the angelic realms.
Yeah.
So interesting, right? People talk about heaven, they always point up to the sky. It's actually, heaven as earth, not even heaven on earth, but heaven as earth.
Yeah.
So the thing of having that delicious food is if you're present to it. I watch people eat all the time as someone who is present, and I watch everything is done unconsciously, pretty much with people. The food gets shoveled in, or, I just observe that. It's about actually being here and experiencing it, not being on automatic. So yes, absolutely, to your point, is not that some magical elixir happens. The surrender piece is really huge, and it's such an active thing. Again, this language has all this sort of like new agey, airy-fairy, just surrender. Surrender is the most arduous, difficult muscle we're going to develop, right? The thing is just to be here with a couple of less pounds on our back, a couple of less kilos of weight on our back. That's when I say you're softer, is that. And does it mean that, some cop is not going to pull you over and you're going to lose your shit in 2 seconds? No, we're not talking about that. But the reset is quicker.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is your experience. I know for me, every time I face a betrayal or a pain and lovingly answer it the best that I can, even with all this wounded aspects of my personality, I just get softer and life gets easier. It's not that more money comes in or this happens or that. It's just, so the surrender piece is when we answer these things consciously.
Yeah.
Ironically, there's less of us here. There's less of me here, but that less of me can actually taste more fully because it's not in an anxious state. And as I take the bite of the gelato, I'm already thinking about the pizza in 5 minutes. And then as I take the bite of the pizza, I'm thinking about the pasta an hour later. I'm in the moment. That's what I feel with you. You're even more in the moment. Yeah. And
I think something that has been so important for me personally in this experience is that there was no God, angels, guides, or guru involved. It was me, my loved ones, and my higher self. And there's a part of me that says, ooh, that sounds arrogant, brother. But it just, I've worked so much on my autonomy, on trusting myself, on counting on myself, which doesn't mean obviously disregarding anybody else's help, but it's about not hoping for the magic wand to make things better.
You cut out the middleman when you do the work. I think the Vatican is knocking on your door. I think the secret police from the Vatican is here now. Run, man, run. The banking system. We cut out the middlemen. See, the whole thing with those things those are the middlemen, and the middlemen are never going to be as clear as your own connection with self. Right? End of the day, it's all self. And then the mind can break it down into these things and, angelic realm and these things. These things can be, quote unquote, real if that's what you need. But just cut out the middleman. Just directly go to source. Yeah. Atman is you. You are Atman. It's not, there's no need for those intermediaries. And, right?
Yeah, it's given me that sense of, of trust in myself, of reliability in myself, and whatever resources are working around me and I don't see every day, but they're there nonetheless.
Yes. But it's again going direct. I mean, you can, get on the autostrada from Milano and go to Roma and stop at every auto grill every 2 hours and gas up, or you can just literally get on, Riverside and Zoom and just punch and get immediate connection. It's like both are valid. One's just a lot quicker.
Right.
So part of doing this work on this level is that as well. And, you had and have direct connection. For a lot of people, belief systems are crutches till they can work towards having direct connection. Once you have direct connection, you don't need the crutches. And I'm not judging it. It's like,
Sure.
We all have to go through phases of that. So ultimately, love is the piece. And ultimately, self-responsibility, which you're very rich in, is the work. Part of this work is not to be alone or do that. We're not saying that. But it's like when you face these things, you get closer and closer to direct connection. That was your experience when I was talking to you. When you found out, when we talked in the hospital, when we talked after, you were really sitting and having direct connection. So no intermediaries needed, but it takes a tremendous amount of lifting to get to that point. And the lifting people are, what do I do? Sit. Your emotions are talking to you. Your feelings are talking to you.
Yeah.
Your fears are talking to you. Your hopes are talking to you. One of the things that's so beautiful about you is, it's the old Zen adage, you've really worked through aversions and preferences. The death thing was really that. There's a part of it that's an aversion. There's a part of it that was a preference. With staying here, reincarnating, there was an aversion, a preference. And you just go like, okay, what's best here? Right? And that's the thing. It's not this black and white. There's a part that's like, man, I'm tired. I don't want to be here anymore. Right? And then you open up, I got loved ones. I don't want to leave them. And then I reminded you, I said, you want to come back. It's got to be for you, not just a responsibility.
Yeah, I remember that.
Part of me saying, hey, give me these names and numbers. I wanted you, at least in that moment, not to have that weight on your back. Not that something like that is going to make that much difference, but it can make a little bit of difference. So you can relax and in that moment be like, what does Ian want?
Yeah.
Right? Again, for people who are on my side of it, where they're dealing with a loved one that's sick, with an animal that's sick, it's so important to try our best. We're human, we're not perfect, but to carry our baggage out of the way and not put it on the back of that human or that animal that has a possibility of leaving this plane, that we don't drag them back because of us. We love them so much. And again, it doesn't mean that you don't grieve. I mean, I cried. And at the same time, I was really like, whatever needs to happen, happen. And also at the same time, I knew I'm going to be connected with you anyway. But there was a human grief. I was like, damn. But I also was really happy. I was like, wow, to be at a place where my brother has the clarity, where there's some kind of option, good on you to have done that much work where that would be there. So again, it's like not to go over our personalities, wishes, and desires, but certainly not to shove that down the throat of someone who's already going through such an intense process of decision.
Yeah.
And I love what you say. Yes, it's not like some magical panacea. I'm just telling you as someone who's been sitting with your energy and, working on you. And, it is a softening that I feel. It's a softening that I feel. Just a side note here as a clinician too, I wanted to say this, in Chinese medicine, Shen, which is your spirit, sits in the heart. So when they go about and muck about the heart, it disturbs the Shen. So there's also something that I've seen with transplants and any kind of abrasion, when they actually work on the heart, it actually disturbs the spirit. So there is a thing that happens and, it resets, but it can take weeks, where people have this sort of weird feelings. That's not psychological. That's not just a trauma of the body. Those things are their own. It's really because the seat of the heart, the seat of the spirit kind of gets shaken up. So it's like sort of a little earthquake. Takes a second for the dust to settle. Yeah. So I just say that both for you as my brother and for people who have any kind of heart procedure, there is a thing there that's just really energetically physiological.
Okay.
So just one more thing on your thing.
Yeah,
it wasn't
thanks.
enough everything else you're doing.
It's okay. I mean, it's all happening, so it's good.
Anything you want to add?
I'm just in awe of how much of everything that's happened, both to me in this week and in the past, has to do with the heart. When I was in my 20s, my mother died of a cardiac arrest. And in my work, when I was training 20 years ago, my supervisor and teacher told me that I was born with a broken heart. And so much of the work I do and is related to being in touch with your heart and using your heart as your guide. And there's this common denominator that constantly comes back, the heart surgery. And it's such I'm just witnessing this recurring element that is so powerful, that is so deep. It's the one muscle that if it stops working, it's bye-bye. So and obviously these last years, I've really paid attention to my heart because it was acting up, and how this whole procedure came about after that same relationship that induced the dark night of the soul. So it's all connected. I see these dots all having this fil rouge that connects them all. And to me, it's just fascinating. I don't have an explanation or some kind of lesson. It's just...
It's not a coincidence, though.
Yeah.
And it's not a coincidence. And I don't know if you remember, right before you went in, I said to you, the heartbreak is getting mended with this surgery, not the physical surgery, but there was something about this. I saw it as a shamanic procedure.
Right.
It wasn't just, there was a shamanic event that happened with this heart surgery where your heart was mended. And it wasn't a surgery. It was all the decades of work leading to the surgery. So there was something profound here. And yes, the mind can't grasp these things and they sound crazy when we say it, but also when you say it to me, immediately in my bones, I'm like, wow, that's a line that's connected.
Yeah.
Like the mind's like, how the hell you're born with a heartbreak, your mother has this event. But we both know, speaking it, and I know our listeners can feel it, there is a connection.
Yeah.
So we don't need to run that through the lens of the mind. We run it through the lens of the heart. In the heart, it feels like, wow, that you were born with a heartbreak and you've had so many of these heart issues emotionally, and then you had the physical heart.
Yeah. And
how amazing that even these couple of months we've been working together, I was sitting with this when you were past the OR of like, wow, like even that you were preparing for it, talking about the dark night of the soul, talking about caretaking and caregiving.
Yeah.
You were really preparing the ground of what's on the other side of this.
Yeah.
And you don't need to know. It gets revealed moment to moment.
Right.
It was a really big deal when you had that moment right before you went in and we talked about it, and I got the emails from you of your loved ones to write to in case you don't come out. It was a big moment where you actually release responsibility because, that's a part of people with our woundings. What caretakers do is we take everyone on as opposed to really tending to ourselves. And that didn't mean that magically you didn't care, far from it. But it was also for a moment just putting the weight down, being like, okay, now Ian really needs to be here for Ian, right?
Yeah.
I come back for us, not just for them. It'll be for me, but it's like, win-win situation. That was really big too. That really struck me when I sat with it. I was like, interesting, because for you, you have been always such a loving person, but it was something for your little boy that you actually chose him. You put the weight down outside the operating room, you held him by his little hand, and you went and laid on a table. That was a really profound image.
Yeah. And thank you for pointing me in that direction. You've always steered me towards what was most important.
I love you, brother.
Yeah,
it's really an honor to walk this path with you. No, it's really beautiful. I just want to quickly share two things. The death thing has been such a part of my life. Having been around it, like I said, the first person I had the good fortune and pain of sitting with, I was 16 years old when they died, literally in my arms. I've been around death for a long time. When I was a judo player, my first martial arts I studied, there was a very famous judoka who followed the samurai principles. And one of his principles was, samurai never knew when they're going to die. So whenever they left their home, they would keep the home really clean and clear, because if they died in battle, people would come to bury him, they would find a home. And as a 13-year-old, it really stuck in my mind, not in some macho ego way. I was like, wow, we can die anytime. So I got in this practice of a little bit, like every time I left home, like I might not come back here. It was a very profound experience. And then years later, I came across Ramana Maharshi, the profound sage, Arunachala, who he had his enlightenment at 16, where he had this very deep fear of death. And then he laid down because he thought he's going to die. And then he actually has his full awakening, a very rare event. And I took that to heart, and I had this death practice. And again, I talk about this in the book, where for a long time, I would lay down and practice like I'm dying. And not going into this new agey thing, angels are coming, my grandfather's coming, nothing like that. Like I just got hit by a car on a motorcycle, side of a country road, and bleeding to death. Really go into it. I would really welcome people to do this death practice, because the death practice is a life practice. Yeah. People right away go like, wow, this is morbid. Just the opposite. If you're not facing the fact that you are not mortal, if you actually do that, you can live life more fully. So you don't need to go through heart surgery. Certainly invitation. Spend a little bit of time. It can be 30 seconds, 2 minutes. Lay down and practice this dying thing. It just makes life more fully lived, and it also makes you drop a lot of bullshit. For those of us who are caretakers, things we don't want to do, and we put a smile on and say yes, or, we have to lie about something because we don't want to do it. Just get more honest with yourself. And again, all this stuff is about living life more fully. It's not a morbid thing. Yeah. It's about softening to be here. Man, it doesn't need to be so much work. It's so much work already. Let's make it a little bit less more work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, selfishly, I'm happy you're here. I know part of you just really hates it, and I know part of you loves it, but I'm so happy here. And the planet's a better place because you're here, brother. And I mean that from the heart. And I know on the other side, you would have been just as much, doing as much, but
I would. But thank you so much. It's good to be here, and I love you very much.
Love you very much, and so beautiful, man. And once again, I'm humbled by the level you apply yourself and do your work. It's really, really beautiful. I'm sure there's a T-shirt and a bumper sticker in this somewhere, but probably that'll be a harder sell than the other ones.
I think not this fucking place again is going to be a...
That was amazing. So just before we go, that was amazing. Share what you said. I laughed so hard when you said that to me.
Well, I mean, that's the thought. And I think it's a shared thought, not this. I think every day we wake up, not every day, but...
My brother went to the other side and just brought me this, not this fucking place again.
Exactly.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you a fair day. Thank you
Likewise,
for
my
doing
brother.
this. I know you're tired, and thank you. I just wanted to do this while it's fresh because I feel it'll be helpful to people. And so much love for you, brother.
Likewise, my brother.
Enjoy the gelato, enjoy the pizza, enjoy the pasta. And we'll see you same bad time, same bad channel.
Yeah. Take good care.
So much love.
Ciao, bello.
Ciao, ciao.
Love you. Ciao.
Bye.